Hi guys, we're going to do one more poem together that is for a double purpose. One, because I love the poem and it's really famous and I would like for you to experience it. But also because I feel like we need one more demonstration of the how to read a poem technique. So this is going to be much less fancy than the video from last week, but about the same length because it's a fairly long poem. We're not going to do all of it. The poem we're looking at is called Ulysses by Alfred Lord Tennyson, is how you say his name. Ulysses is the Roman name for Odysseus. So this is a poem about the familiar character Odysseus. And it picks up with him toward the end of his life after the adventures of the Iliad and the Odyssey are over. And he is stuck at home in Ithaca feeling a little bored, and a little sad that his best times are behind him. This poem is found in your textbook in the section called Solitude. So you might be able to identify a little bit with Odysseus, or Ulysses as he's called here, because he is yearning for adventure, but he's stuck at home in Ithaca, away from all his friends. So we are going to actually look at the second half of the poem, beginning with There Lies the Port. And I'm going to skip the cold read just for the sake of time. And instead, we're going to move straight into the warm read. And I have made a photocopy of the poem, which will facilitate much easier annotation on the video because I'll be able to do my pen here. Before we jump into it, let me remind you what our techniques are. We are going to follow the punctuation, and we're going to let that punctuation lead us to concentrating on one clause at a time. One clause, one sentence, one bite-sized segment at a time. I like to use slash marks to separate those and kind of force yourself to slow down and interpret this one piece at a time. When you are sure that that piece has been completely comprehended by your mind, then you give it a little check mark and move on to the next piece. When you come across a piece or a segment or a clause, let's just call them pieces from now on, so you might find some of them difficult due to hard words. So we're going to replace the hard words. If the word is hard, we're going to mark it out, and we're going to replace it with an easier one that means the same thing. And so you will need a dictionary. And I recommend the dictionary on your phone because the one that pops up automatically will give you synonyms. We'll practice that today. Once you've replaced the words, you are going to reread the clause with the replacements to make sure that it is totally comprehended. And if it is, you put a check mark and then, of course, move on to the next piece. Some pieces, even though you've made sense of the words, are still going to be what I will now refer to as head scratchers, because they are just ridiculously hard language, or maybe they're unrealistic, figurative, strange. If it's a head scratcher, you might want to put a question mark there, but don't forget you have a responsibility to follow up on your question marks. That means sending me an email or coming to Extra Help and letting me help you. The other thing you might do with a head scratcher is just push through and ask yourself, creatively speaking, what do you believe the poet means? And that's when we're going to write our annotations in. I do expect the words to be written in the margin. And we're going to use an arrow. I think last time I made it a squiggly arrow. I don't care if it's squiggly or straight, but we're going to use arrows to indicate our interpretations, our solutions to head scratchers, or any other little light bulb insights that you want to add into the margin. And that is essentially the end of reading, but there is still more to do in the process that I gave you and which I expect you to do. The rest of this is going to pull everything together and get you thinking a little bit more artistically and personally about the poem. So we're going to do the who, what, when, where, and why. I tend to like to do that at the top. Then you're going to underline a memorable image. Then you're going to double underline that one special word. And really you can do up to like 3 special words, but I was just trying to make it simple by, let's see, is this even on the screen? There we go. You can do up to 3, but at the very least you need to do 1. And then the journaling at the bottom is kind of a personalizing kind of thing. And I hope you guys can see that. My camera is at an odd angle. Hope it works. All right, guys, so let's now move on to the poem. And I want you to find the spot. We're going to begin with There Lies the Port. And let me move this up a little bit. All right, so let's begin going piece by piece. This seems like our first logical break. There lies the port. If you need to know what port means, we would cross it out and write the dock. Makes sense for Odysseus. He was a sailor and a warrior who had his many Odyssey adventures out on the water. So he is sitting at home in Ithaca looking at the dock. Check. The vessel puffs her sail, there gloom the dark broad seas. There's a good place to stop. That is very simple. Check. My mariners, souls that have toiled and wrought and thought with me. That looks like a good place to break. There's a dash there to let us know it's a good place to break. Word replacements. You might not know what a mariner is. It would be a sailor. And wrought is kind of old-fashioned. It has to do with working hard. So let's replace wrought with worked hard. And now whenever you do the word replacement, you reread to make sure that it's earned a check mark. So here we go. My sailors, souls that have toiled and worked hard and thought with me. Okay, that's easy enough. He's remembering all the guys that were his shipmates. Next piece. That ever with a frolic welcome took the thunder and the sunshine. Feels like a good place to stop. Now, every now and then, when you're breaking it up, you're going to be breaking up sentences. So he's still talking about the sailors here. If you ever get to a section all by itself and you're confused, then connect it with whatever came before. We are breaking it up. The poet is being continuous. So the sailors that ever with a frolic welcome took the thunder and the sunshine. Frolic means happy. And now we do the reread with the new word and a connection. The sailors that ever with a happy welcome took the thunder and the sunshine. All right, I get it. They happily welcome both the thundering days, which are bad, and the sunshine days, which are good. Continuing. And opposed free hearts, free foreheads. All right, again, this is still a continuation, so we're still talking about the sailors. The sailors opposed free hearts, free foreheads. You know, opposed is a difficult word here. Maybe that's what's making it hard. Let's replace opposed. When you think about opposing someone, you're fighting them, or you're standing up to them, or standing up against. Let's put standing up against. You find whatever replacement fits, whatever replacement makes sense. So let's reread the line with the replacement. The sailors standing up against free hearts, free foreheads. All right, well, darn it, we still have ourselves a head scratcher. That's my new term here for when you're looking at it and you've done everything you know how to do, but it still just doesn't make sense. You could just put a question mark here and keep going. If that's the case, you would be responsible for following up with a poetry expert, i.e. me. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you what I think this means, and we're going to enter that as an interpretation. I think that he's suggesting that the sailors, in their mission to get on the boat and go fight the war, had to stand up against their hearts and their foreheads. Foreheads? How do you stand up against your forehead? Well, that's where you do your thinking. So they had to stand up against what was in their heart, which might be, I don't know, love for their home that they were leaving, or maybe it was fear. And they had to stand up against their thoughts. So I'm going to write that they had to, if you stand up against your free heart, maybe they had to have courage. And with the free foreheads, and maybe they had to have courage and wisdom. That is my best interpretation, and the arrow indicates an interpretation. If you're not totally sure, feel free to keep a question mark there, and then see what you think later on. But we're going to keep on going. You and I are old. End. Makes sense? He is talking about his sailor friends, his former shipmates, and they're not with him anymore. But they're old. They've retired. The wars are over. Check mark. Old age hath yet his honor and his toil. Makes sense? It is definitely honorable to be elderly and be finished with your work. Death closes all, but something ere the end, some work of noble note may yet be done. Good place to stop. We have this old-fashioned word before. Going to do a replacement. My reread. Death closes all, but something before the end, some work of noble note may yet be done. All right, so even though he and his friends are old, there is some kind of good work that they can still do, even as old guys. Not unbecoming men that strove with gods. All right, now here's one of those situations where it's a little odd, but that's because we've chopped up our sentence. So we're talking about the work. There's some noble work that's still left for these old guys to do, and that old work is not unbecoming men that strove with gods. Okay, so let's do some word replacement. Unbecoming is weird. So I'm going to cross out unbecoming, and I looked it up and chose unflattering. Or you could also do inappropriate. And then to strive, it had a number of synonyms. I really liked the use of ventured. Okay, let's reread with replacements. This work we have to do is not unflattering to men that ventured with gods. If it's not unflattering, then it is flattering. So let's read it again. This work that we have left to do is flattering to men that ventured with gods. Okay, now I get it. It was a bit of a head scratcher, so I'm going to go ahead and add in some notes. The work that's left to do will be appropriate for retired heroes. These are men who strove with gods, who ventured with the gods. Odysseus and all of his former shipmates, they were partnering with Athena and fighting against Poseidon. And so whatever work there is left for them to do as old guys, he's pretty sure that there's still something to do that befits a heroic man of his stature with his grand history. Check. The lights begin to twinkle from the rocks. Super easy. The long day wanes. Super easy. Well, unless you know what wanes. Wanes means dies. The day is dying. That means it's nighttime. The slow moon climbs. Well, those go together. The day is dying and the moon climbs, double check mark. The deep moans round with many voices. All right, this may be a question mark. I'm going to tell you what I think that it means. I think that the moans are the Greeks' evening prayers to the gods. It was customary, and even in Christianity, which you may be more familiar with, to do nightly prayers. So he's just setting the scene as the nighttime and the typical nighttime. Check. Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world. Easy. Check. Push off, and sitting well in order, smite the sounding furrows. Oh, we have some word replacements. So to smite something is like to hit it, to destroy it, to conquer it. I think I'm going to go with conquer. I like that word the best. You're going to pick your best synonym. A furrow is a wave, like an ocean wave. So let's read it again. Push off, and sitting well in order, conquer the sounding waves. I believe that makes sense. He wants to push off in his boat again and go out and conquer the waves again, just like he used to do when he was young. Check. For my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset and the baths of all the western stars until I die. So lovely and so easy. Move this up a bit. Now, even though this is not a head scratcher, I see something that I find interesting, so I am going to add in a little interpretive arrow. The western stars. Rather than it being southern stars or northern or eastern, it's western. And that's because, if you'll remember, that western means endings, sunset. And so he's talking about sailing off with his final adventure until he dies under the western stars, the final stars. Next piece. It may be that the gulfs will wash us down. Makes sense. It may be we shall touch the happy isles and see the great Achilles whom we knew. That makes sense as long as you know who Achilles is. So you would stop and look that up as necessary, but I think you know who Achilles was, the great hero of the Iliad. And the happy isles, I'm just going to add that in here. The happy isles are basically the Greek heaven. Very few people made it to the Greek heaven. 99% of them went to Hades for eternity. But if you were a special, special person who is beloved by the gods, like Achilles, like Odysseus, then you had good hope of making it to the happy isles. So maybe we're going to sail all the way straight to heaven and meet Achilles. That's awesome. Got it. Though much is taken, much abides. This is easy if you know what abides means. To abide is really to stay. To stay at home, to stay together, to live in place. So we're going to pick the simplest replacement and reread. Though much is taken, much stays. All right, that makes sense. What has been taken from them? Well, their youth. And many of their colleagues have died. But what stays? What stays is their hope and their vigor. Everything that they've learned. Tons of things have stayed, even though they're old. Next piece. And though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, we are. This is a longer segment, but I think it's fairly simple. We're not as strong as we were when we were young, way back when we could move earth and heaven. Now that's very figurative. Let's interpret that. do great and amazing deeds. And let's see, we're getting that. Let's move this up. So we're not as strong as we were back when we did great and amazing deeds, but that which we are, we are. I think that means kind of, it is what it is. And I'm satisfied, check. One equal temper of heroic hearts. Well, this doesn't make sense at all if we're thinking about like losing your temper or getting mad. So I looked the word up and I chose the synonym of disposition or attitude. Let's go with attitude. Reread. One equal attitude of heroic hearts. Got it. You know, it is what it is. We're not strong anymore, but we still have an attitude of heroism in our hearts. And the last piece. Made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. And there's the end. I think that's fairly simple as long as you do know what yield means. And yield means to give in, to let the other person go. For you to stop while somebody else gets to go. You know that from a yield sign. So let's reread. Made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to give in. All right, now, this is the end of the tough work, but we are not finished with the process. We're going to finish up with the reflective, artistic, and analytical parts. So I'm going to pop up here to the top, and we're going to do our who, what, when, where, and why. So who? Odysseus. And I guess his old shipmates. Well, no, they're not there. He's just remembering them. He's stuck at home alone. What? He seems to be kind of it's like retirement, seclusion. The section in the poetry book is called seclusion. When? It's after the Odyssey, in his old age. Where? He's at home at Ithaca, and in particular, he's at the port looking out at the sea. And then the ever important question of why. Why is he saying all of this? Why is Odysseus talking like this? Because he wants adventure. And he wants a full life. Okay, now there's still a couple more things that we need to do. The next two things bring us back to the text to do an image analysis and some diction analysis. Image analysis. We're going to underline the one image in the poem that we think should stick in our brains and come back to memory anytime anybody ever mentions Ulysses by Alfred Lord Tennyson again. And for me, I think mine is going to be this one. My purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset and the baths of all the western stars until I die. I see him in his armor. He's older, but he's still got the armor and it still fits. And he's in his old boat again, and he's out on this beautiful Grecian sea, this blue-green sea. And he's sailing toward the west, and the sun is starting to set, and all those beautiful colors are at the horizon, and the sky is getting dark, and the western stars are coming out. And to me, that is just the image. Late in life, but oh, he's not finished. Love that picture. Make a beautiful painting. And then the other bit of analysis we're going to do is that one single word that you think is the most artistic choice of all. And I would say you can do up to 3. Okay, you can do as many as you want. 1 to 3. And I'm going to go ahead and do 3 because this is a longer poem than we've done together before. I think I'm going to go with gloom. He's looking at the sea and he's saying the sea looks gloomy, but I think it's because he's gloomy. But, he doesn't stay gloomy for long. So I think another word that I might choose that is significant is strove. Particularly as it means ventured, to work really hard, to strive, to take an adventure. And this is very much about striving. In fact, the word strive comes up here again at the end. So let's just repeat that word. But my particular favorite is yield. Not to yield. It's a strong word. It's the last word. It's his final statement. Doesn't matter how old this guy is, he will not yield. I love that. Okay, one last piece to do, your final reflection. I'm not going to take the time to write it out, but we can just imagine that I'm going to, here at the bottom, write in about maybe 2 or 3 sentences. And this is a personal connection. And for me, as a 52-year-old woman, I remember being younger and thinking that 50 sounded old. And now that I'm 52, 50 does not seem old at all. And so I really identify with Odysseus here. So for me, my journal entry would definitely be about, there's a lot, what's the line? Though much is taken, much abides. Though much is taken, much abides. I'm not that super young. My daughter has graduated and moved away. But oh gosh, how much I still have. And the idea that there's plenty of adventures left that's still ahead of me makes this one of my favorite poems. Another reason it's a favorite is not just because I'm getting old. I've actually always loved the poem. There's a beautiful power to it. And I think what I want to do right now is do a quick hot read for you as we finish up this lesson. And I also want to note that this poem was quoted in the movie Skyfall, the James Bond movie from several years back. And it was quoted by Judi Dench in a very lovely, very dramatic, moving fashion. And I'm going to post that link to HawkNet. And as soon as you get finished with this video, I want you to click on that and watch a little segment from Skyfall to finish up our lesson for today. But if you'll just hang out for one more minute while I reread the poem, let's do the hot read. And now what we're able to do is follow the punctuation, but with comprehension in our minds. And that's going to enable us to put the right emotion and emphasis in the lines. But the other thing I'm going to do is pay attention to the poetry, to the musicality. This poem is in iambic pentameter, just like Shakespeare writes in, which means that the lines have this rhythm. There lies the port, the vessel puffs her sail. There gloom the dark broad seas, my mariners. Souls that have toiled and wrought and thought with me, that ever with a frolic welcome took. All right, that sounds ridiculous, but the cadence is there. So when I read it, particularly in the longer phrases, I am going to let that beautiful wave of rhythm rise to the top. So here we go. The second half of Ulysses by Alfred Lord Tennyson. There lies the port. The vessel puffs her sail. There gloom the dark, broad seas. My mariners, souls that have toiled and wrought and thought with me, that ever with a frolic welcome took the thunder and the sunshine, and opposed free hearts, free foreheads. You and I are old. Old age hath yet his honor and his toil. Death closes all, but something ere the end, some work of noble note may yet be done, not unbecoming men that strove with gods. The lights begin to twinkle from the rocks. The long day wanes. The slow moon climbs. The deep moans round with many voices. Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world. Push off, and sitting well in order, smite the sounding furrows, for my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset and the baths of all the western stars until I die. It may be that the gulfs will wash us down. It may be we shall touch the happy isles and see the great Achilles whom we knew. Though much is taken, much abides. And though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, we are. One equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. That's it, guys. If you will please take a few moments to go watch the Skyfall clip, which never fails to bring a tear to my sappy English teacher eyes, and then go off and have a lovely day. Bye.